welcome to another episode of Outpost 138. I'm your host with the most, Rob St. John, and with me as always, my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend himself, patient zero of the T-Virus, Stefan JD.
Yep, that's me.
And Stefan, I have three important questions for you right now, right off the bat.
Oh my God. All right, here we go.
Here we go. Do you like horror?
I do like horror.
Do you like video games?
I do like video games.
Do you like horror in your video games?
I do like horror video games, yes.
Oh shit, son. Then do I have an episode for you?
All right.
Yeah, so hold on to your green herbs because we are going to be talking about just general horror in video games and the impact that they have had on both you and I as people.
Yes.
You know, you got to start. What is the earliest spooky game you remember playing?
You know, it's harder to define it because I remember Friday the 13th on NES.
Yeah.
And I remember being spooked by it, but like I don't have like an actual I just know that happened. I don't like remember the actual memory. Yeah. And then after that, the closest thing, because I mean Resident Evil started when I was like 10, which was in 96, 97.
Yeah, 96.
Yep. There was that, but right before that, I played Doom, and I want to say that hearing the cacodemons or whatever they are around the corner, that was kind of spooky. That was kind of
yeah, very much so. When you're that young, and that game kicks ass too.
It does. It's a badass. It's a badass game. But yeah, I want to say aside from those two vague things, I would say Resident Evil.
Evil, yeah, that's going to be a lot of people's answer, I think. And speaking of that, it's kind of fortuitous that we're recording on this date, 21st of January.
Mm-hmm.
It has been 24 years to the day that Res Evil 2 was released.
Resident Evil 2.
That was the second game I ever pre-ordered.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I pre-ordered it at the Babbage's in Cloverleaf Mall. And neither one of those things still exist. There's no Babbage's, there's no Cloverleaf Mall.
It's the first game I bought with my actual money.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And then I got a T-shirt for my pre-order. It was just a black T-shirt on the upper left breast. It had the Capcom logo, and on the back it just had the cover art of, like, I guess it's supposed to be a zombie peeking around the corner, whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it is 24 years to the day, meaning I was 14 when that game released.
Do you still have that shirt?
No, that is long gone.
Okay, I was gonna say, how much you want for it?
No, because the first game I ever pre-ordered was Final Fantasy VII, which was the September before Resident Evil 2, and I got a shirt for that one too, and that one's also long gone.
Oh man, that would be, that's classic.
Yeah, my first memories, and it's kind of like you with the F-13 for NES. My first ones are of Ghosts and Goblins for the NES. And obviously, it's not so much a horror game as it is a action platformer that's spooky, horror elements. And that was many, many nights of me, my uncle, and my oldest brother trying to beat that. And, that's one of the most notoriously hard games ever. And I don't even know if we ever did. I know I didn't until I was a teenager.
Is this the I like babes, uncle, or is this?
No. This is my forklift driving uncle.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And there was that, and I was also obsessed with renting the first Castlevania. Again.
Oh yeah, I played that too.
Yeah, not the most, not exactly super spooky, but it's an action platformer that had a horror aesthetic. Although I will admit, when I was little, I was terrified of the floating Medusa heads. They scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I want to say that, and the giant bat right off the bat was a little spook. And people look at it now and they're like, "You were spooked by it." I mean, you had to have been there. The times, it's kind of like And I always equate it to this, like people being afraid of the famous horror monster movie stuff back in the black and white. I mean, people were terrified of that when it came out. Now it's just, it's kooky or whatever. But you just had to have been there for the time. Like there was nothing like it, so it was new. You didn't know what to expect from it, and that's why it was scary. Plus, you were a child, and
you're stupid young, and it's like, oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had that, and I played F-13 on the NES, and I played the Nightmare on Elm Street NES game.
Oh,
and
wow.
Those both terrified me and scared the shit out of me.
That was always checked out at my Blockbuster, so I could never get Nightmare.
My friend had it, like, he owned it. When the little MIDI version started playing 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You, I would run through the level trying to find, either coffee or a stereo to wake myself up. And if I didn't, I turned the system off.
Oh, man.
So I didn't have to fight Freddy.
I did that on some Resident Evil. That's cool, though.
But then after, there was a number of NES games that I loved. But my first 16-bit, the Genesis and Super Nintendo era, first one I got was a Genesis. And through my rentings of just going up to the local store and renting, I discovered the majesty, the brilliance, the awesomeness of Splatterhouse 2.
Oh, yeah. I played that in arcade.
I had, I didn't know what Splatterhouse was because the original was released in the arcades, but it was in less than 100 arcades across America because a lot of them didn't want it because of how gory it was. So if you got to play it in an American arcade and then you got to play a rare game. It was ported to the Turbo Graphics. And who the fuck had a Turbo Graphic? Nobody. Yeah, so the first one I played was the second one for the Genesis.
Even arguably now you could say, who has the Turbo Graphics? Nobody.
Which is why if you buy the Splatterhouse for the Turbo Graphics complete in box, now it's $150, $175, depending on the condition.
Oh, it's not too bad.
Yeah, but if you get a Japanese version still sealed, it's about $350.
Yeah, that'll put a dent in the wallet.
And by the time when they ported it from the arcade to the Turbo Graphics, they had edited it because obviously you can just look at it and be like, oh, that main character is totally supposed to be Jason Voorhees. That's just it. And they were like, they might come after us. So when they ported it to the Turbo Graphics, they changed his mask from white to red.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the sequel came around, they were like, that's not good enough. So they stopped making it a hockey mask and turned it into a skull mask.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And they like you can even go on Etsy now and find people who have made them, and they're relatively cheap, but they're pretty badass looking.
Absolutely. And, all right, let's see. I probably played that about 92 or so. So I'm like 7 or 8 years old. And I've already become obsessed with horror and Friday the 13th especially. And here's this game where I'm basically controlling Jason and I'm butchering zombies and monsters and there's gore and like, oh my God, dude, that was like an epiphany for me. It was amazing.
I could believe that. I think there's even don't you even kill like giant like fetuses and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, they are with a chainsaw too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No
You chainsaw some giant fetuses that are hanging from nooses.
That's just awesome. I knew before I even like saw Splatterhouse at my local Blockbuster, which it was always checked out, so I never like got to rent it, sadly. And I think it was Splatterhouse 3 that they had, but they would actually have these ads inside of comic books for the TurboGrafx Splatterhouse video game, and it was like a little comic book. It told the origin story of.
Yes, I've seen that.
We should put it in the video, maybe.
Yeah, if I can. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And when the third one for Genesis came out, they took out a big, full page ad in various magazines, and it was something along the lines of, this game is the reason that there's warning labels or something very, very similar. That's just before the ESRB became a thing.
Mm.
And anybody who's old enough to remember when they tried to censor video games, what was it? Was it Lieberman that went to trying to stop video games from being sold to kids and everything back in like the early 90s?
Yeah, and I think it kicked off with Doom, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, he attacked 5, because you can watch that now. The whole Senate hearing or whatever that is available. And I've watched it, and he attacks 5 specific games, which are Doom, Lethal Enforcers.
Oh, God.
That light gun game where you shot mocap actors or whatever. Yeah, I love that game.
It was great for the time.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat, obviously.
Mortal Kombat.
Mm-hmm.
Boop, 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 boop.
And Night Trap, everyone's favorite Night Trap.
I'm on the Night Trap, ready to crash and burn.
Wasn't that Dana Plato in that? And finally, Splatterhouse 3. They had, at the time, this guy was like the CEO of Sega of America up on the stand. And Lieberman was like, he pulled out that Splatterhouse 3 ad and was like, hey, don't you think that this ad just makes fun of your... Because at the time, Sega had their own rating system. He's like, don't you think that makes fun of your ratings? Doesn't that, lower the meaning of your rating system? And the CEO guy was like, we don't, we have no control over how they want to advertise their game.
Mm-hmm.
We can't stop them. And of course, obviously, that was 30 odd years ago. So no, nothing's changed. They still want to blame video games and rap music and anything new they don't understand.
Yeah, the counterculture is always the problem.
Yeah, I remember that. That was great. But like you said, once that 32-bit era hit, and my uncle, not the famous one, my uncle called me. He's like, dude, I got this game called Resident Evil. You've got to see this.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we should set it up for people because, again, when you're a little kid and everything's new to you, like my first actual panic I had was Night of the Living Dead. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea that they were called zombies. I just knew something was wrong with them, and it terrified the shit out of me. And then you transfer that into going into Resident Evil, and now you're trying to run away from them, and in the game, Jill or Chris feels like an id to you, so you're terrified, obviously, thinking it's like you. Yeah. And that I just can't set it up enough that it was new, it was fresh, and that feeling, that unsettling feeling, especially the music. Even today, I still think the vibe is creepy, but that unsettling feeling, just for whatever reason, just sucked you in.
Yeah, it was. Like we said, if you look at it now, the graphics are laughable. The voice acting is awful. It controls like garbage, kind of.
That's arguable.
That's arguable. It depends on how much you love tank controls.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's just all of a sudden, I went from the 16-bit Mario jumping, on turtles, and all of a sudden here's these 3D, somewhat realistic-looking people, fully voiced, being attacked by these horrible monsters while in a creepy mansion while eerie music plays.
Right.
And it was like, oh my, and then of course, not only was it eerie, not only was it spooky, you had jump scares.
Oh yeah.
The fucking Cerberus coming through the window in the hallway on the first floor. Oh my God.
Yeah, the zombie in the closet in the keeper's room.
When you read the diary, he just busts out.
Yep.
Tasty.
It's tasty. There's a lot of them in there. Trying to think what else was in there. I mean, just anything, like the setup for the hunters. When you go back to the mansion, you think it's cleared out because you killed all the zombies. Then all of a sudden it cuts to this random cutscene where something's following the path you just took, leading up to where you are. It was all just surreal and unsettling.
It was just something brand new. I mean, they kind of had that already with Alone in the Dark, but that was strictly PC at the time. And I don't know, it didn't have the same production values that Res Evil had. And it was just something about it. It was just a magical moment.
Yeah, there's something magical about that cheesy B-movie zombie. It's American culture George Romero zombies being fed through Japanese writers and Japanese creators and being sold back to us. And there's just something magical in that creation.
Somehow that formula worked.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow it did. And, it would spawn, obviously, a giant franchise. It would also spawn imitators. Some good, like Silent Hill. Some bad, like Countdown Vampires.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, my God. God, my ex wanted me to get that game so bad.
Yeah, we got to put it on here.
I'll see what I can do. But, with all that, it was, the birth of survival horror. Because we were talking about the 16 and 8-bit. They were mainly just action platformers, but they had a spooky vibe to them. This, you had to conserve your steps, your ammunition, your healing items. Which enemies do you dodge? Which enemies do you kill? Which rooms do you ignore? All that stuff. I had never done anything like that.
Yeah, but it's also like I think the heart of what I'm trying to get to about that, like the true meaning of survival horror, because Resident Evil is basically based off a game, Sweet Home, that was already on the NES during the 8-bit era. But I think the true meaning of it was that, like you said, like that feeling of comfortability in 16-bit graphics, of just seeing side scrolling or flat images.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see a polygonal character, which feels like it's representing you. And that's the thing, the transition, the sudden leap. And in your mind's eye thinking graphics will never get better than this. And we all said
that. Of course not.
And
I've said that so many times in my life.
Yeah, and I'm still saying it, but it's almost the equivalent of if you jacked into the Matrix, you just felt like it was so real because of how new and interesting and fresh it was for the period.
Yeah, but for me and you and just people our age, it just hit at that right time, and it was just perfect. You had the imitators that tried to come along, and some good, some bad, but RE2 came out exactly 24 years ago, and it was absolutely just a George Romero zombie game. I mean, up until you start fighting the crazy shit, but when you're running to the police station and you hide in Kendo's shop for a quick second and they eat him, that is all just Romero.
Mm-hmm.
It is fantastic, and it's aged not the best, but if you were to go back in time, that is a 10-10 game.
I still think it's a 10-10 game. Because even if you go back, I still feel that people can go back, because I know I did with Silent Hill, but people can go back and see the quality of that period, of what attracted people to that series. I think you can still find that, because I recently beat Silent Hill 1, I want to say 4 years ago on PS1 for the first time, because I had already beaten 2 when I was a teenager and all that, but I never went back to the first one. And when I went back, it was man, this is just top notch. It is a beautiful game. It's sound quality, everything about it just hit all the right notes. And this is 2.5 decades after it came out that I could still see the quality.
So
yeah.
You were alive during that time. You just didn't get around to play it. And second, you are a connoisseur of survival horror. Now, could you hand the original RE2 to a 12-year-old kid today?
I think so.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
What about the original Resident Evil?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Definitely. I mean, you think that they'd enjoy it if they enjoy survival horror?
I 100% believe they could, yeah.
I wonder about.
The reason why I think that is because I equate it to the same fact that, if I put on Dawn of the Dead for my nieces or a kid who liked zombies and horror, I still think they would get a quality, good, fun time out of it. Although they would obviously see the little minor subtleties of wait, why are they all painted blue? Or you know what I mean? They would be so. It's when I talk to a kid who I asked him, I was like, what's your favorite Star Wars? He's like, well, the prequels. It's because he grew up with that. Like, and he sees the CGI and he thinks that's quality work. Whereas when he watches the old ones, they just look old. But he still liked the old ones. And I think you could do that with Resident Evil. I still think that kids could go back and be like, wow, it's actually pretty fun.
I'd like to. I wish I had that outview. Maybe it's just because kids and I don't get along. I don't know, but just something about it. And if I could introduce, or let me rephrase that. If I could experience the game again for the first time, it would probably be RE2.
I would
if
say,
not,
yeah.
it'd be one of the top ones I'd pick.
Yeah, it would definitely be top 5.
It's just magical, and we talked about Silent Hills. That was only one came out on the PS1, and it was survival horror in the same way that RE was, but it was way more psychological, less Dawn of the Dead, more Jacob's Ladder. Would you say?
Yeah.
Because I remember renting it, and I'm like, oh hey, this controls and feels like RE, and then you get locked into that gated area with the gray children, and they just stab you to death, and that's how the game begins. I'm like, oh, this is starting very, very different, and I was hooked.
Well, can you think of any movies that came out around that time, like aside from Jacob's Ladder, the obvious, where, like, because in Silent Hill, the game messes with you. Team Silent sets up things where they just fuck with you. Like, literally, yeah. Like you'll be checking a drawer, it says, oh, it's empty. And then you'll walk away. Or no, a better example would be like you're checking a bathroom stall, it's empty, and you walk away, and then you hear somebody knocking on it from the inside. And then you go back and it's still empty, and like stuff like that. Can you think of any movies that were like that type of scare tactics? Because I almost think it's unique to Silent Hill in that way.
Yeah, from that era, that late 90s, I can't think of anything.
Like not even Japanese.
When I think of that, I immediately just think, of course, of Jacob's Ladder. But that was, obviously way, way, way before. But no, I can't. Especially video games, whether it's movies or video games, I can't think. That's just something just to fuck with you is what it was.
Yeah, but like the horror of that, because it is creepy when you're by yourself playing that, especially as a kid. So yeah, stuff like that is unsettling to me, and I still think it's unique to the series and to video games in general. Those types of experiences.
Yeah, a lot of games now do have that, but especially, maybe it was different in Japan. Maybe there were games like that had that style of horror and scares before, but we hadn't had it here in the West, at least not on console. I wasn't the biggest PC gamer as a kid. My parents couldn't afford a PC, so I can't, with the exception of like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D, I can't really talk.
Same. Yeah, I don't think I got a home computer till about 2000, 2001.
Yeah, same here.
Space Odyssey. Sorry.
God damn it. But yeah, then came what I believe, maybe others, with the PS2, GameCube, and the original Xbox, the golden era of survival horror. And that just from RE, you had the remake of the original. You had RE0. You had Code Veronica. And RE4, probably the most important. Then you had Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, Silent Hill The Room, Silent Hill Origins. And those are just the two big heavy hitters. That's not counting stuff like, Cold Fear.
Cold Fear.
Oh, I enjoyed Cold Fear.
Funny enough, I played a little bit of it the first time about a week ago, and I got about an hour in. Some random guy jumped out of a fire, killed me immediately, and I hadn't even reached a save point, so I had to start all over.
I'm not saying it was, the best game, but I enjoyed it. But
it was certainly interesting. It reminded me of that movie Virus.
Yeah, that is an underrated movie. I don't care what Jamie Lee Curtis says.
Oh man, I started reading the comic book recently, the Dark Horse one.
Right.
It's fucking amazing.
Shit. I might have to borrow that.
Yeah. Yeah,
but Cold Fear is great. Then you had games that weren't survival horror of that era, but had the horror vibes, and that would be like Devil May Cry, or well, I guess maybe Onimusha could be somewhat survival horror, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
But speaking of Devil May Cry, that is obviously well-loved, long-lived franchise with horror that is very hard, and I can't get into it. I've tried like 2 or 3 times.
I still stick by the stance that the first one is my favorite. The third one is the best of the series. The fourth one was pretty good to follow, and I still haven't played the fifth one. And we do not talk about the second one. So
now, that I do know. That I do know in the fandom is you do not talk about the second one.
Yeah, fuck that game.
But I've tried. I actually still own the first one. I had the PS2 disc. I'm looking at it. It was, for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into it. It's certainly not a bad game.
It's
I don't know.
It's very weird in the fact that, honestly, and if people have played it and remember like the last hour of the first game, it almost kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones in a way, but like the dark, weird anime, like Japanese version. I don't know. Because it's like you're on a boat and then like things are flooding and then you have to escape and you're like, it just so reminds me of like Temple of Doom or something. I don't know why.
I couldn't get into that one. I didn't bother with the second one. And then the third one came around and I tried that and I enjoyed that one and I did beat it. But that was it. And I was just like, eh.
Yeah, it's the third one was difficult the first time I played it, and then I didn't play it again for like 10 years, and then finally I was like, you know what? I'm gonna really put effort into this and try and beat it. And I did, and I was like, all right, yeah, I can see why people appreciated that one.
There you go. But one new horror franchise that was introduced in that era that I enjoyed, but I'm pretty sure it's just long dead now.
Wait, can I guess?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Plants vs. Zombies.
That wasn't that era, you dumbass. That was 360. But no, yeah. It was Hunter the Reckoning.
Oh,
White Wolf Studios.
Oh my god, I used to play that all the time.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, where you could be the father or the biker or the police officer or the raver, and you just shot up zombies and demons and monsters, and it was great.
It was literally like, if people don't know what it is, it was literally Gauntlet Legends, but redone as a horror video game.
Yes.
And it was more 3D, more like split screen. You could play 4-player, and it was your personal kind of character that you would choose. Like, they all had different abilities, just like Gauntlet Legends. It was so badass. And
it got 2 sequels, and that was it. And then no more from that, which was heartbreaking, even though that the last one, the main bad guy was voiced by Ron Perlman, and he can definitely voice a bad guy.
Yeah. Those games, too, we should say were like, they kind of played like arcade games, so they're actually very difficult. And like, once you ran out of continues, that was it.
Yeah. Super fun games, though. But, like I said, long dead. We have the magnificent, beautiful one-shot that'll probably never, ever come back of Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem for the GameCube.
It's rented great. I love it. I played it for... Yeah, I never got to beat it.
I mean, to get the best ending, you have to, or to get the true ending, I should say, you do have to beat the game 3 times in a row. But when you're playing a game like that, you're like, man, that's fine, because this game is fucking sweet. We'll probably never get a remake, a remaster, or a sequel.
Yeah, that's true. The studio that created it, I think, was sucked up by another studio. So,
and I mean, well, Nintendo owns the rights, but so does Dennis Didac. I forget his name, and he's kind of apparently he's an asshole. He's like a weird asshole, so it would take Nintendo and a weird asshole to work together.
Probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is, and that's why I'm not sure the price nowadays, but if you want a complete inbox of that, it's ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, and we should say too that like, because we're both like horror fans, we're horrors essentially.
Yes, very much so.
Spread them. We like I would take anything though that was horror, and like I know around this period another game that I was consumed by was Luigi's Mansion, because even Nintendo was like, man, I need to get in on this. Just another banger of a classic.
It was that Nintendo lightheartedness, but it was spooky and it was fun, and Luigi got his time in the spotlight.
Yeah, before he cost them millions of dollars in the year of Luigi.
Oops a daisy.
Oops a daisy.
Oops a daisy.
Roll Tide.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun, and I don't know if you got around to the one on Switch yet.
Not yet.
There's one boss fight that the controls are a little wonky, but other than that, it's great.
I played an hour of it at a friend's house. It seemed pretty. It looked beautiful for. Yeah, it looked great.
So that was, that, like I said, that was kind of like the golden era of horror games, because you had all those that we talked about. And then you had ones that I know, obviously, we're forgetting a fuck ton, whether it's survival horror or not, like The Thing, based a sequel to John Carpenter's movie.
Oh man,
what that he helped write.
Yeah, talk about one of those games that hits just the sweet spot. I mean, not like mechanically, it still needed to be tweaked a little bit, but overall, scary as hell.
It was knowing that Carpenter himself was involved is awesome. Is like really, really great. Then there was another Japanese horror game that took place in feudal Japan called Kuon. And that is another super rare one where you're going to pay like $300+ for a complete inbox.
No, thank you.
So that was great, and and a lot of these games, if this episode is well received, we will be doing deep dives into some of our favorite games, and that would definitely include things like RE2 and RE4 and Silent Hill 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, like even games that people may not talk about a lot too, we should say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we'll do the big heavy hitters, but I'd love to do one on Countdown Vampires, because I know how much you love that game.
Oh.
God, that game's so fucking awful. Everything about that game is cringe, dude.
It would give me an excuse to beat it, but yes, I do not look forward. I look forward to the discussion more than the game.
Yeah, right. Just watch a playthrough and say you played. Like, oh yeah, I played the shit out of that game.
Yeah, dumpster fire.
But then we get to the HD era of gaming with the 360 and the PS3, and we definitely got comments on this one and of this era with Dead Space. On our last video, people wanted us to talk about the Dead Space franchise, and Dead Space 1 and 2 are just Resident Evil 4 in space, and I'm happy with that. I love that.
Yeah, I recently played through all three. I want to say it was last year, and as harsh as I was on 3 when it first came out, I was just having so much fun that when I replayed it last year, I was like, you know what? No, I love this game too.
I wasn't hard on it, and I don't think it's a bad game. It's not as good as 1 and 2, but it's still a fun game, because, like I said, it's basically RE4 in space with not only the awful, awful monsters that are horrifying and jump scares and one-hit kills and all that, but you also have there's psychological torture that Isaac's going through. And that's horrifying. So it's all just great.
Yeah, the Dead Space specifically had that weird approach where they weren't comfortable with signing on to specifically giving the main protagonist, Isaac Clarke, a voice actor. So he's kind of like your Gordon Freeman in space, RE2 type guy. And then when the second game rolls around, that's when everything picks up and it goes full, just kill anything that moves. Here's all the ammo you need. We don't give a fuck. Do it.
And here are exploding baby necromorphs. Holy fuck.
Yeah. It was absolutely amazing, and it even predates kind of like a Mr. X, like RE2 remake thing where there's a unkillable enemy that follows you around.
Oh, the Regenerator, is that what he's called?
The Regenerator, and that just terrified the fuck out of me.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a nifty hat you can shoot off though.
That's true. That's very true.
But Dead Space is, and I never got around to the Wii light gun Dead Space game.
I played it. I got near the end. I didn't beat it. I still own it, but it's okay. But it's very like formulaic, like a Time Crisis thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of hard with that franchise to do much with it. I mean, it's basically point and shoot.
Yep.
And now I will say that the Dead Space animated prequel movie, I forget what the little subtitle of that was or whatever.
Downfall.
Yeah, that movie was awful.
I liked the story, but the animation was, it wasn't the best.
And they had like energy chainsaws or something. I'm like, what the hell is this?
The plasma chain cutters or whatever.
Yeah, whatever those things were. Yeah, I was like, man, and I'll never forget that movie because that was the first ever movie that I rented from Netflix when the discs came in the mail.
You're sitting at your door waiting for Dead Space Downfall.
Space Downfall, yeah.
This is gonna be so awesome when it gets here, whenever that is.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
So we had the birth of, and sadly the death of, Dead Space in that era, and it was great and then good and then gone. We also had Dead Rising, which is another phenomenal series that is on its last leg, if not dead by now.
Oh man, they killed it hardcore with 4.
Yeah. Frank's Big Package, yeah.
Fucking
wasn't
awful.
the best. Now, but the 3 that were on that era, which was 1, 2, and 2 off the record, those were all great. I love the story of Dead Rising 2, especially with Chuck Green and doing everything he can to get his daughter the Zombrex.
I only played the DLC, like the beginning DLC, the prequel, but
where you're in that small town.
Yeah, I haven't played the actual Dead Rising 2 yet, though.
I love it. It's if you've ever played the first one, because the first one's great. It may not have aged the best because there's some funky controls with it. There's a lot of escort mission stuff, and the AI for the escorters just isn't there. They will stop to fight any and every zombie. They will not just run with you. But I mean, if you can get past that, the story is great, and it's very much Romero in that. Yeah, the zombies are monsters, but humans are worse.
Yeah, it was it was kind of creepy, I want to say at the time, but it wasn't as creepy as other games. It was very slapstick in a way.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of that. And the second one, it improved on that. There was a lot of the AI for your escorts were better, and the controls were a little bit smoother, and it was stuff like that. It was a huge jump for it, and I loved it. And then Off the Record, which is a what if non-canon story, that was a lot of fun too. And I'm very, very sad that franchise is basically dead.
Yeah, it could have, honestly, I'm surprised it also lasted as long as it did, but at the same time, I think it could have lasted. It could have kept going if they had made the right moves with it. Like one of the things is they probably should have included more than 2 players, like almost, and we're gonna have to talk about this too, but like a Left 4 Dead thing.
Oh yeah,
where you could have like 4 people, 16 people to a map. I mean, I'm pretty sure it could be supported today, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, there were ways that it could have gone, but 4 was not the way.
Yeah, and that's like in the same vein as like Resident Evil Outbreak, ahead of its time.
Very much so.
Yeah, and just didn't make the right moves at the right time. But
Yeah, with Outbreak, I always think, on console before online console was commonplace, uh,
hmm
you couldn't voice chat, which now wouldn't stop players at all. Like if you and I were going to play it, we'd talk over Skype or we'd talk in a PS4 party or whatever.
yeah, it'd be just click, click, we're good. Back then, it
Yeah.
was like, oh man, I got to hook this Ethernet cable where and do what, and I have to spend. Wait, do they have what?
Yeah, yeah. It was way before it should have been. Going from Dead Rising, like you said, to Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead was just a huge, huge, phenomenal co-op game, and it just happened to have a spooky aesthetic that worked so great.
Yeah, I actually have a story behind that. When I was like 18, I want to say I had convinced myself. I was like, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna make video games, and I'm gonna start like today. I'm gonna start writing the video game I want, and I'm gonna come up with it, and I'm gonna make it myself, and blah blah blah. Get a team together, whatever. I had delusions.
Yeah, of grandeur.
Yeah. I started writing it. I said it's going to be 4 players. It's going to be a zombie apocalypse. It's going to be episodic. And I was like, after doing this for like months, working on it, creating level design, writing a script, like little characters and everything, I was like, wait, I should probably stop and check and see if this has already been done before or not. And as soon as I typed it in, it said coming soon by Valve, Left 4 Dead.
You're like, fuck.
Yeah, I was like, fuck, they beat me to it.
My cash cow.
Yeah. And it was when it came, and then from that point on, I was like, oh man, I'm buying this day one. And I did.
It's a formula that many have imitated, some successfully, some not so much.
Yeah.
But it's one of those games that if you have your group of friends, your 3 other friends, you can boot it up today and still have a blast with it.
Oh yeah.
And it's going on 15 years old or something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one came and it was great. And I actually like the characters and the second one better.
I could see why that would be the case. It probably feels more like home in that way.
Funny.
Yeah. But
neat.
the levels are certainly more expansive and more challenging. I know I probably spent because I did get all the achievements for Left 4 Dead on my original Xbox account. And I think I spent like 12 hours one day trying to just get No Mercy or something on Expert.
Ugh.
Yeah, so I went hardcore on that game.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are great games. They're super fun, though obviously if at the time when you were playing them, you were doing strictly offline single player, you were limited in the fun you were going to have.
Mm-hmm.
But you get online with your buddies, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those games where you actually considered, if you didn't have it before, you definitely considered getting an online Game Pass too.
Yeah. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, the fun.
Yeah, it was something just about that. It was that and Street Fighter 4 when that came to consoles. That's with those two combined. I finally broke down. I was like, all right, I'll get this Xbox Live thing, whatever the hell this is.
Yeah,
and I did, and I've been online ever since.
Oh man, I wish I could go back in time and record some of the hate messages I got from 10-year-olds just screaming in their mics. Cause you could do that. If you somebody pissed you off on the other team, you could go to their profile and say send message, and you could get a whole minute to say whatever you want and then send it to them. And so many little kids would be like, I fucking hate you. Die, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Just screaming at me.
Yeah, that was a different time because it's I don't even know if you could report people back then, or if it it didn't do anything.
Yep,
it didn't do nothing.
No, some people reported. Some good Christian boys reported my username.
Oh no, I know what it is.
Yep, it's very derogatory, and I was
menstrual pudding, everyone.
Yes.
Menstrual pudding.
Menstrual pudding. Microsoft's you got to change this. Goes against our guidelines. I'm like, all right, I'll just leave out the U and make it menstrual pudding. There we go. Change.
They're like good enough, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was also, at the time where if you were really good in Halo or Left 4 Dead or whatever, a 12-year-old would call you every racial slur in the book. Every racial slur. It didn't matter what color you were and what color he was. They were going to call you.
Yep.
Good times, except not.
It's very weird.
Very weird times, yeah. Now, the one-shot game that they wanted us to talk about that's a game I loved was Shadows of the Dam. Did you ever play that one?
I did, and I beat it, yep.
That game is amazing it plays great. It's not the best. But its presentation and aesthetic and voice acting and character design and just vibe is 10/10.
It's funny because I enjoyed my time with it. I don't think I'd ever go back to it. But it's one of those games where I think Shinji Mikami, Suda51, and Akira.
It was just those two.
No, I think Akira was a part of it, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he did the music.
Yeah.
You're correct.
And because he could do his guitar shit. And
he loves. We love.
And I have shaken that man's hand before.
You lucky bastard.
Yeah, I even have his autograph. I want to say that if people don't know the history behind it really quickly is that they were promised by EA or whoever.
It was EA.
EA published it. Of course it's EA. And they're like, hey, you guys are the powerhouse of the cell. Like, you're the mitochondria. You guys run it all in the game industry, especially with horror. And you know what? We're going to take you, Suda, and you, Mikami, and you, Yamaoka, and we're going to give you all this money to make this game, this project, do whatever you want. And they all signed on, and then EA was like, you know what? That's too much money. Never mind. Here's a little bit. Fucking make something good out of it.
Yeah, that's EA for you.
Yep, and you can tell when you play that game where the budget starts and ends.
And what they wanted was the edge of Suda, because he's kind of an edgy punk rock dude.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted the horror of Mikami because he's one of the co-creators of Resident Evil, in case people don't know.
Yeah, pretty much the driving force, though.
Yeah, and they wanted that. They wanted to go, and that's genius to put those two together. It really is.
It is.
And then Akira, who, if anyone doesn't know, he does the beautiful, amazing Silent Hill soundtracks.
He is the heart of Silent Hill, in my opinion.
Yes. Those three combined, if I were a billionaire, I'd throw them like a couple $100 million, be like, please make a game. But Shadows of the Dam is great. I love that, you play as a Mexican demon hunter named Garcia Hotspur. Are you kidding me?
Gosh.
Dude, that's a Robert Rodriguez character.
It is.
And if Machete showed up as a DLC character, he'd fit right in.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, even Hotspur, he looks like Robert Rodriguez character.
I always think about my ex's brother with this game. His wife, she wasn't a gamer, but she enjoyed watching him play games. And her family was from Mexico. And so she loved Garcia Hotspur because it was representation of a Mexican man as a hero.
He looks more like Desperado El Mariachi rather than like your typical mariachi.
Yeah, there you go. You nailed it. And I always thought that was weird of her to still like that because she is a very devout Catholic.
It's funny that you say all this because I know who all these people are.
Yeah. And it was just that just always kind of tripped me out. It's like, yeah, she's proud to have this representation in games. It's like, hey, that's great, and hey, this is where your gun is called a boner, and you're going to hell to fight demons, and she's super, super Catholic.
Wow.
So that always sticks out of my mind.
Don't you even start that game with banging a chick or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah. But she liked it, so good for her. I guess. I guess we'll stop with last generation, the PS4 era.
Well, one more game before we get there.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have to bring this up because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I think one of the biggest hits for me of that period, and my first survival horror game of that period as well, was Condemned Criminal Origins.
Oh yeah, a launch title for the 360.
Yeah, and I rebought it recently and played it. Still a banger, kick-ass game. I think a lot of things that horror did in first person back then too, especially like if you include Fear or anything else that was like first person, is there would be a lot of levels where there was just empty space. There was like
creepy mannequins.
Yep, creepy mannequins, empty space, like it was dark, and then all of a sudden just something would move or fall over or something would run at you. And that was like par for the course of that time, I think, for first person shooters, is a lot of empty space but creepy psychological stuff happening. Yeah,
and then the sequel came out and we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and I couldn't even finish it.
Yeah, I barely started it, so.
Same.
Yeah. But then we won't go to the PS5 era. We'll stop with PS4. With the PS4, you had Bloodborne come out, which is probably the best Lovecraftian game ever, done by the guy that invented Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It is. I love it. I put more time in that than I should have. It's 10/10. Very, very little wrong with it. You also had Resident Evil, I guess you could say, rebirthed itself, brought itself back to life.
Resident Rebirth.
Because in the last gen, you had 5 and 6, which were very heavily action oriented. It left a lot of the survival horror behind. But then with this of the PS4 generation, you had Remake 2 and you had RE7. And both were very much survival horror.
Yeah. Because the thing is that when RE6 was being promoted, Capcom was like, oh, like those people who didn't like RE5, well, guess what? We're going to return to horror with RE6. It's return to form. And that was a fucking lie.
I think the beginning of Leon's campaign is, but that's it.
That was a fucking lie.
Yeah, the beginning of Leon's campaign is survival horror, and then
like the
as soon as you get to the church, then as soon as you get to the church, it's like, nope, we're back to RE5, and then it goes above and beyond RE5 with like Chris's campaign, where you're literally in the army in Humvees and stuff.
It gets squirrely, and nobody wants to be reminded of that BS. But
I like that game. I told you, I just finished it again like a week ago or something.
I promise we're gonna do a whole episode of me bitching about it. At some point.
I will. Don't worry. When we do it, and we will, it will not be me trying to defend every little shitty aspect of that game, because if you bring up something about that game and it's shit and I know it is, I'll be like, yeah, you are absolutely right.
Robert's gonna agree with me on everything then.
No.
I'm just kidding. I digress.
We'll get to it.
Yes. The game that really took me by surprise though, and it wasn't RE7, which was fundamentally the return to horror, essentially. The one that actually got me in this era was Alien Isolation.
Holy shit! That game
literally
is terrifying.
Yep. It was so scary to me the first time I played it that I had to take breaks. I was having panic attack the whole time.
That is another kind of, I don't know, subgenre of the survival horror that came out around this time. It kind of started with, the one that I think of first is Amnesia, which is the first person horror, survival horror, but you can't fight back. You have to hide.
Mm-hmm. And then Outlast.
Yeah, it was that. And I'm not a big fan of those type of games. I've never really played any of them, but I love the Alien franchise so much. I'm like, I got to try this. I bought it. I played through it, and I probably aged 5 years playing that game. 'Cause it just took years off my life, dude. Oh my god.
Yeah, because the thought of it was when they first showed the game, it was showing robots. These robots called Working Joes, and it was showing the alien, but it never showed specifically everything of what the game had to offer. It was just like, here's like a little, like, it's gonna be great, just trust us. And when you played it, the Working Joes are some of the most terrifying enemies I've ever fought in any fucking game. They are robots that literally walk around and will try and kill you. And you didn't think that would be scary, but the way they do it in that game, it's so fucking effective.
Yeah, they're basically mass production bishops from Aliens. They're just their androids or whatever, and they're malfunctioning and they're horrifying.
Yeah, I even asked my roommate, I was like, can you stay in the room while I do play this game?
Did you ever play the DLC? It was the original movie.
Hadley's Hope or whatever.
No, where it was you were on the Nostromo.
The Nostromo. I bought a copy off of Amazon that said it was supposed to come with it, and then it just didn't. And then when I asked Amazon, they're like, we don't care, so I haven't.
Well, I mean, that's great because it's the likeness and imitators, voice imitators of all the crew and everything. You will never realize how much you hate those characters until one of them accidentally jump scares you. You're like, God damn it, Parker, gosh. I will kill you. Yeah, that is the only game of that subgenre. Again, I'm not sure if it has a title or anything, but that's the only one I've ever completed, and that's because I love Alien.
Oh, I could see that. How long was that DLC?
It wasn't very long. It was, if you count them talking and everything, maybe 45 minutes, an hour.
Oh shit! All right, cool. Yeah, I might play that then. Yeah.
Well, I never beat it. That's what I've heard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've seen gameplay of it, and like I said, I played it, and it was one of those, like you said, I'm going to take a break. I got to step away before I have a massive stroke. And for whatever reason, I just never got back to it.
Yeah, same. I think I got to chapter 11, which is like halfway in the main campaign, and then I stepped away because it was just too much. I mean, there was one moment where I think the alien was coming, like it was around, and I was hiding behind a box, and I just like kept peeking around for like 20 minutes, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to take a break.
Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, the team that made that game, they won quite a few awards for the AI of the alien, because it was an AI that they, invented, coded. He has no set pattern. The xenomorph just literally wanders at random.
Right, and it essentially knows where you're at all times, but like the AI is pretending like, I don't see you.
Yeah.
You're not there.
That's a great game that, probably, like I said, it took years off my life.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I agree.
And then also with the PS4 generation, we had the rebirth again of a franchise of Doom. Doom came back in a big face-punching way.
Mm-hmm.
It is both those games, Doom and Doom Eternal. If you play those games, it will put hair on your chest and your voice will drop a couple octaves. That is just manly testosterone blowing up demons and ripping tear until it is done. Yeah,
the fact that the people who took over the franchise were like, we're finally going to do a Doom 4, essentially, quote unquote.
Yeah.
They were like, people get that this doesn't need to be taken seriously. Like we can have fun with this. So that's what they do. They basically have fun with it, and that's what I appreciate about that game most.
Yeah, it was. Here's what we loved about the original, so we're just going to make it in beautiful HD and crank it up to 11.
Yeah.
And it's just gore, and one of the taglines is, the only thing they fear is you.
Which is true.
It was just like, the demons of hell fear you. It's like, oh yeah. Oh, that's the stuff. That's the serotonin in my brain right there.
Yeah, and if this is anyone's first episode with us, like, because this is a different type of episode, we actually did already cover Friday the 13th, the game, in our Friday the 13th videos, so you can go check those out if you're wondering why we don't bring that up.
Yeah, well, we enjoyed it though. It's 90% positive when we talk about that game.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I can't wait for the team's next project.
Same. I there's like 2 more games that I specifically wanted to talk about, but I'm wondering if you played them. One of them was Soma.
Soma, yes. Soma is great, very trippy in a way, and body horror.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very unclear what's going on. You're on a space station, or you believe you're on a station, I should say.
Yeah, we'll just say station.
And stations.
Until we get to the deep dive on that one, we'll just say station.
And it's very unclear what's going on, but everything that's robotic thinks it's human, and you have to figure out why. And that is a very enticing story element that, to me, like when I discovered that's the approach, I was all in.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, and I actually did not play Soma until they put in a mode where there's no enemies, and I was like, all right, let me see.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's nowhere near as scary, but it gets boring. So I couldn't play Soma, but I was so interested in why does this AI think it's human? I watched a playthrough of it, and I was like, oh shit, and it's really good.
Yeah, and we'll get to that too.
Oh yeah.
The other game was not too scary. It could be, I guess. Until Dawn.
Until Dawn, the only good one of that type of game, I will say.
Yes, and for anyone who doesn't know, that hasn't played it, it's very much like a Telltale game, but like a first-party, souped-up version of that, where they throw all the best graphics at it, all the best production, the best voice acting, because that's what's going to carry these games. They try to get it to where you can die sometimes and have to restart, but overall there's characters that can die by you fucking up, like running away and stumbling on something so cliche, and they'll just stay dead, and then you're just stuck.
The story continues on without them.
Yeah, so it was like a horror movie slasher in that way, not specifically a slasher in the game. There is and there isn't, but you'd have to play it to know.
And it was something unique to me. I always thought of it as what the guys that made Night Trap thought they were making. Like
exactly.
An interactive horror movie.
Night Trap. Yep.
Yeah, because that's what that was, and it worked. And then I got the sequel where you're on that boat from like World War II. It's like a carrier or something. And I didn't like that at all.
I never played that one. Yeah.
I tried, and I was like, because the fun of that game is, okay, hey, this character died. How's that going to affect the story? So you don't restart. You're like, yeah, all right, we'll see what happens. Every death I hit in that game was a game over.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't want this. I want what will happen to the rest of to the story now that character B is dead or whatever.
Yeah, I could just approach it from keep going with who's left.
Right. And for some reason, every death I hit, and don't worry, I hit plenty, was a complete game over and not we're going to keep going without him.
Yeah, I agree. That would not sit well with me.
Right? That's one of the big draws of Until Dawn. It's the butterfly effect with every little choice you make.
Exactly. Yep, that was how it was sold, and that's how I fell in love with it. Absolutely.
It's a super fun game, and I wish we could get another of that quality.
I agree. This period though is just rife. Like there's so many horror games we could talk about.
Oh yeah. We'll never mention them all.
Right. That's fine, but I just want to remind people, we're just having a general discussion about what we grew up with. But in the future we are going to do deep dives into many of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if it is a shorter game, like we will do a dive into a number of them. Like, say, I could do the original Splatterhouse Trilogy. They're obviously not long games.
Right.
And, you can beat them each one in around 30 to 45 minutes. And so I could do that in one episode. But like with something like RE, you've got to go game by game.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely worth, the series is worth the time.
Yeah, except for maybe Outbreak.
I love Outbreak.
And what was it on PS1? Survivor?
I don't like Survivor.
Remember Gaiden on the Game Boy Color?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, were you going to pay like $400 if you want a copy of that?
Yeah, you can actually find people who remade
Yeah,
on like Etsy for like $5 or something. What are they called? Pro cards?
repros.
Repros, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, RE has some stinkers in its line.
It certainly does, and they when they stunk, they really stunk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just with any franchise of any genre. We hold it up high on this pedestal. So when they drop the bomb, they drop it. It's just a shit bomb everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Especially with Capcom trying to capitalize on it and say, "Oh, we'll just put out anything, slap this name on it, people will buy it, we'll make loads of money."
Yeah. Like Umbrella, whatever that last one they did, that online shooter.
Oh, Umbrella Corps. Yeah.
Yeah. And what they're trying to get started with RE Verse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's basically, from my understanding, that's going to be, you can pick from all these different characters throughout Resident Evil history, and you're online with other players. And it's kind of like Mercenaries mode.
Sort of, but it's
with
like
enemies throughout the whole franchise, not just a specific game.
Well, it's like a versus mode too, I believe, where like characters fight each other, and I just don't know why they would. Like, why would Leon fight Claire? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't get it, but we have RE8, and that's what matters.
Yes, exactly. Village is
is it 10-10 or is it 9-10? I don't know. It's one of those. But that should be it for, just us talking about games, the horror games that we play without doing any of our deep dives. I hope everyone enjoyed, this, and I hope you leave comments about your history with it, or games that we talked about, or maybe games you want us to bring up briefly that we did miss out on, like maybe Siren Blood Curse.
Yeah, or Manhunt or something.
Ooh, Manhunt. That had potential, but those controls
fizzled fast. Yeah.
Those controls. But yeah, Stefan, we don't know yet what we're going to do for our next episode unless you already have your mind made up.
I do, but I'm going to keep it a surprise.
Oh, shit.
Dear.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so we don't even know. It might not be a movie. It might be a comic book. It might be a game. It might be a show.
I think when people see it, they'll know why I chose it. I hope that everyone realizes that, in an effort to help us, if they could like, share, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
When we reach 1,000 subscribers, then obviously you can start monetizing, and you can start actually like selling shirts and doing all that crazy fun stuff that I actually am looking forward to. But we cannot do that without your support. So please.
But you do have a creative brain to come up with all if we were to ever have merchandise.
Yes, I would 100% like make some badass like heavy metal Outpost 138 shirts or something. Yes.
Just make sure it's legally distinct enough that, Danzig or Jerry only doesn't come after us.
Yes, 100%.
All right, well, thank you again, ladies, gentlemen, and those in between. Please join us for our next episode, whatever it may be.